We're so bad. We've gone from worse to budget conflict. We can look at it just like you, I mean, seriously, that's serious.
I wonder if you can do it my.
It's like minority sport.
We see it change.
So part of that.
Just push it to the right or left, or do this. Yeah, that will do
Now,
Let me know when you're ready.
Ready, just recording.
All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. If we, hey, Kenny. Kenny,
Mr. Langland, you're the city attorney.
I hate to be formal, but since we're on Zoom, I gotta be on the microphone here. I'm assuming everybody in the room knows who I am, and in case not, I'm Rick Lindsay. I have the pleasure of serving the city as a city attorney and here to talk tonight about redistricting. This will be the third time that I've had the pleasure of doing this. We did it the first time, I believe, in 2012. We did it again in 2017, and here we are after the 2020 Decennial Digest, doing it one more time. So the reason for redistricting is required in the U.S. Constitution, that is to guarantee one person, one vote. But on top of that lies the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which prevents local governments and state governments from taking any action that would cause problems for voting for minorities, racial and otherwise. So we have to go through a series of checks to make sure that we redistrict properly. So for race and ethnicity, the districts must be drawn such they do not dilute racial and ethnic voting power. Two historical tactics that were used to do that were what's now called cracking and packing. Cracking is splitting up ethnic groups, racial groups into smaller groups, and then packing is pushing them into one or two or whatever districts to again dilute their overall voting power. Then next we have redistricting goals that are not absolutely required, but are the goals that to be achieved if possible when redistricting, not to place two incumbents in the same district. While considering race and ethnicity, they should not be the predominant factors to determine where and how to draw the district lines. Also, we should look for compactness, contiguousness, and respect for communities defined by actual shared interest. And if race is a predominant factor, then it's subject to what's called strict scrutiny, and it must comply with the Voting Rights Act, which I discussed here a few minutes ago. Oh, doing it wrong. There we go. All right, so the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was a law passed by Congress in that year and signed into law by President Johnson. It was designed to address the problems of disenfranchisement, if I can say that, of Blacks and other minorities. The southern states were subject to that, as were several other jurisdictions across the country. And for about 50 years, 60 years, we had to go through what's called pre-clearance, which meant we had to go before the U.S. Justice Department before we could change any of the voting laws. In 2013, the United States Supreme Court ruled that the continued use of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act was unconstitutional unless you could still prove that governments were acting inappropriately and illegally. So today, we still have to comply with the requirements of the law, but no longer are subject to pre-clearance unless it's shown that jurisdictions engaging in efforts to disenfranchise minority voters. My belief is you need to be careful and clearly show that all changes to the voting laws are done in a way that does not violate the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And our goal here in Chattahoochee Hills ought to be to redraw the district lines in such a manner that they would pass the requirements of pre-clearance. So when a court views a redistricting, and sometimes you'll hear about that on the news, they'll look and see if the district is compact, is it drawn geographically so that racial, ethnic, and language minority communities are included? Are the district boundaries fairly regular and without extensive tentacles looking like an amoeba or a spider or something like that? Also, you need to look and see if there's proportionality. And that's do minorities have the opportunity to elect representatives of their choice in a number of districts roughly proportional to the percentage of minority voters in the city? And again, must maintain substantially equal populations between the districts. In other words, one member, or excuse me, one person, one vote. Okay, so where are we today? In Chattahoochee Hills, the 2020 Decennial Digest said that we have 2,948 people live in our city. The Black population is about 649 citizens, or about 22% of our total population. So to achieve the goal of proportionality and also to adhere to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, we really should have about one district that provides a majority minority population and give it the opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice. So let's look at the council districts of 2017 and 2023. First one here is 2017. Those are your current council districts, and I'm going to walk over to the screen and just point them out. This is District 1, District 2, 3, I'm probably get this wrong, 4 and 5. Is that right?
That's right.
4 and 5. Right. All right, so this is today. What we're looking at is what do we need to do to make sure that we have one person, one vote. And so the existing districts of 2017, you can see the number of folks who resided or reside in each of the districts as they were in 2017. So District 1, 540 people, 524 and 2, 533 and 3, 538 and 4, and then 529 and 5. All of those met the criteria for one person, one vote. And we did not crack or pack the minority population, and actually had or have one of the districts that is a majority minority population. So now we go to the new districts for 2023, and I'm going to go over where they are, but then I'm going to ask Mr. Bill Bader to come up. He is our consultant who has worked with his magic computer to redraw the lines. So these are the new districts that are being proposed. They are not adopted yet. That goes before the city council. I'll talk about the process of how that actually happens here a little bit later in the presentation. But you can see that, and again, I'm going to come off the mic. District 1 has grown in area, not necessarily so much in population, but in area, coming more to the west. District 2 is pretty close to what it is today, a little switch here, a little switch over here. 3 has had a kind of significant push over toward the river and going down south. Again, is this 4? I always get it back.
5.
This is 5. A 5 has had a really a big shift. Almost split, but it does, it's contiguous right here at Rico and Atlanta, thank you. And then the biggest change has been with council district number 4, and that is Serenbe. And the reason for that is that Serenbe's population has grown faster and greater than the rest of the city. So in order to ensure that we have basically one person, one vote, District 4 became much smaller in geographic size, but maintains the same proportionality of individuals who reside in the districts as do the other 4 districts. And that is shown here. Whoops. Again, the city has grown a little bit, so we were about 530 people, 535 people per district. Now we have basically about 579, 593. The largest is 603, and then District 5 is 597. So again, the what's called the deviation is very, very small. If I did the calculations right, it's less than 4%. deviation from one to the other. And the standard is really anything less than 10%. So we have achieved those goals. And those are that they're compact and contiguous. There are no tentacles. They all kind of make sense. One vote, one person, one vote. Deviation, I have about 2%, but I redid the math and I think it's a little bit less than 4%. We do have still one district that is minority majority, and another district, district number 2, that's about 25% minority population, and there's no cracking and no packing. So we have, let me see if I wanted to go back. So you need somebody with more there we go. A side-by-side comparison of the districts. I'll leave that here so that Bill can come up and talk about it. And really, there's almost no room to vary from these. There was maybe a little one voting block to go over to another district or something, but basically the computer tells us in order to do the proportionality, also to achieve the requirements of the Civil Rights Act of 1965, this is what the districts have to be. So Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk about really what voting blocks are and how the districts are drawn pursuant to the census.
Good evening. I thought I'd just go over how this came to be. First thing I had to do after I got a call for you all to see if I would do this or could do this. Of course, sure, I'm retired. It was a fun project. I enjoy this area here too. First thing you do is gather information. So I got the Geographic Information System files from the Atlanta Regional Commission. Paul DiRojalamo is his name. He is the coordinator for the ARC relative to the Census Bureau. So he was a great source of information. So you need two kinds of files. One of them is one set of files consists of the census blocks. Okay, so the census blocks are derived from the census tracts. I believe there are 4 tracts that reach into Chattahoochee Hills, and we have about 162 blocks. These are irregularly shaped and sized entities, and how they come about those I don't know, but they change from time to time, from census to census. So so you have the geographic files, right? The shapes of the boundaries for the blocks, and so they're the building blocks to piece this together. And then the census data: population, race, Hispanic origin, that would be ethnicity, and voting age. Those are all statistics that you needed. So the next step is to construct the map, and the maps and display the population by blocks. And luckily, all those other things that we need to do fall into line with this. So, so I did that, and I tried to stay as close to the 2017 nodes for those areas as I could. And where they needed to expand, I had to take them out of another area. So basically, this one expanded into this area. So that required area 3 to change. And area 2 didn't change by much. That was the annexation area in 2017. The big change came when I looked at the data for Serenity. It had enough people in that one contiguous area to be a district almost by itself. So, so that required a change in the rest of what was their district, and pretty much had to switch out with this area. So I just tried to shift them based on keeping those each one with about 490, excuse me, 590. I think that was the average or the target for population for each one of the districts. So, and then after I did that, I submitted them to Mr. Lindsay and to Ron. And then I made some adjustments and this is what you have. So. Any questions about that? So.
I'll talk about the process and how we adopt these next bill. All right, so Georgia law allows cities to govern, and it's called the home rule power. And this is one of our powers that we have. So in order to adopt this, these new districts, we have to present this at 2 consecutive city council meetings. The maps must be maintained here at City Hall and also at the Superior Court Clerk's office, and then have public hearing at the city council meeting, the second council meeting. And after that, the council will vote on it. They do not have to adopt this, but this is, again, what is being recommended. And I can tell you, back in 2012, the first time we had a redistrict, when Fulton County had given us the districts for the council districts for Chattahoochee Hills, they were way, way off. And there's no way we were anywhere close to 1 person, 1 vote. So when we got the Decennial Digest, the city had just started and had no money. And so Carol Wolf, who was the city manager at the time, gave me the wonderful job of coming up and redistricting with no ability to put it into a computer, but to take those wonderful census blocks with the information's in there and do it by hand. It took me 3 days to do that. I used to have hair before that time, and presented what became the districts after 2012. So to have the ability now to have somebody like Bill to do this and can do it on his computer is wonderful. And again, he and I and Robbie have talked about this and whether a little census block can be moved here or there. Again, some slight deviations from what's being presented is possible, but very little, very, very little. So this is pretty much it. We tried again to keep communities together best we could, to have reasonable and logical boundaries of the district. And so that's what is being presented this evening. Any questions? Yes.
This is totally based on population in 2020, is that correct?
Correct.
No estimate of people that have moved in or flux or anything?
No, it has to be done on the Decennial Digest. When we did it in 2017, it was because we had a large annexation, I believe in 16. And so before the next council election, we had to redistrict because now we had one of the districts that was way, way out. It was no longer proportional. So we weren't 1 person, 1 vote. So we had to go through the process in the kind of the middle of a decade because of the normally, not assuming no annexation or some kind of change like that. These will be the districts or whatever is voted in until 2030.
And even in 17, you used the 2010 number.
Yeah, we had to use the 2010. That's all you can use. You can't use estimates. You have to use the Decennial Digest. And so when we're redistricting it again in 2030, I'll either be here in a wheelchair or you'll have somebody new doing it. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thanks very much for attending and listening on Zoom.
Any questions from anybody out on Zoom world?
All right. Thanks, Ray.
That means either everybody's asleep or everybody is fully informed. Thank you.
They're driving down the road, paying attention. I have a chat. Hold on. Oh, that was Tom. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for attending, everybody on Zoom. We're going to close out. Have a good night. Those are my friends from Heatherwood up there, I see.